Hello, dear friends, dear students from all over Europe we're in another lesson today. This time, a very important lesson, I would say. It's even a turning point lesson, I would say, in our work on the wisdom of Kabbalah. Together with me, as usual, Amit, my dear friend, and Tal is with us. She's ready to get all your questions, and we don't want to waste even a second of our time today. So to summarize the lesson in the most elegant and internal, special way of what we talked about love, let's see a clip with Rav Lightman.
Usually for beginners, also when I started, they told me there's an iron world between the spiritual world and this world. Don't connect between the two in order not to get confused. Now, this whole time I've been hearing from you that in relationship between people, and you said before that to connect between the relationship between me and him in the relationship of love, I start revealing the spiritual world. I start dealing with it.
Wait. The quality of love does not belong with our world.
But you give us instructions here.
What instructions here are we talking about here? Still, as you're standing and talking to me in such a way, so am I giving a command to what? To your body or to your soul? If you start relating with love to the other, it's called that you're operating your soul. You still have this quality, only a shattered point of it. If you were to start from that point to build the attitude towards the other as love, and you'll have some inclination towards the other, which is called love, that inclination is called my soul. It's called my soul because it's built upon the will to receive, which received the correction in an order to bestow. And this inclination is called love. Now, if you will have such a thing, that's it. You're already spiritual. With this approach towards the other, you start discovering the Nanchai, the worlds, and all that there is between you and him, until you begin to sense him in such a way that you and him are the same. It's considered that you have attained Ein Sof, eternity. There's no limits. So, with our love, we can discover our soul, this special desire, which is our goal, because within this soul, we come to the revelation of the upper force, the source, the root of the whole of life. And during this lesson, we want to enter even deeper and talk about the wisdom of Kabbalah and our connection to it. How do we learn this? An interlude, and we'll continue.
Okay, friends. So basically, in the previous lesson and in the recent lessons in general, we spoke about the principles that prevent us from being happy, that bring us to a chase, an endless chase in this life after pleasure and after the quality which is called quality of love, the true quality of love which we want to acquire. And we do it by starting to acknowledge and get into the spiritual system in which we begin to live and develop our new personality, the connected, the whole personality, which we were forever. Only now in our perception, we perceive ourselves differently. So we want to do a small rehearse and to get into this system that we will delve into it today, a bit deeper, and we will see how Kabbalists, from the attainment of the system, they know how to guide us, to convey us in the entrance towards that entrance to the spiritual reality. So as we have learned, we have this one whole kli which was created, the will to receive. Let's call it a desire. And we have a light. And we know, we've learned that basically, in order for the Creator in order for him to be able to be realized, to bring the creature to that altitude that he wants to see him, which is his own degree, he has to disappear from him. So we see a process of concealment here from a state where we have 100% light until a state where we have 0% light, 0% of the feeling of the Creator. We have no contact with Him. Here in this world, this is where we are, we have no sensation of the Creator. This is our world. And these are the worlds, as we have learned, Olam Adam Kadmon. We spoke about those names briefly. We will learn more about them in the next semester. Olam Adam Kadmon, Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. 5 worlds. In each of them, there are 25 stages. All in all, we have 125 stages of concealment, degrees of concealment of the Creator. This whole thing enters our desire in a form of reshimot. We spoke about it in the previous lesson. We're doing a quick rehearse. You remember that we said that every encounter, in every departure of the light from the desire, each and every such stage, is encoded as some spiritual information, like a spiritual DNA inside our desire and the descent from above downward. And we receive here a state where our desire has some inner program, where basically the whole cascading from above downward, this emotional spiritual state, from the moment we're connected, whole, filled with the light of the Creator, up to the state where we are completely empty from it, is folded inside of us. How does it develop? In fact, this whole process is a process of creating a preliminary structure in which the soul is about to be created, the future created being, which is us. This whole process is creating a place, a system, in which there's going to be a creature. You want to speak about the birth of the creature, of the created being?
Sure, I'll talk about it. The birth of the creature comes from the word bar, which is outside of the Creator. We're talking about a desire which feels itself not dependent on the Creator, independent, and its desire to be one with the Creator comes from Him. This desire is called a soul, or a creature, but the creature is the soul is the degree in which one longs to come back and be with the Creator. We talked about 2 systems. We talked about a system which in essence comes towards to the quality of the Creator, and a system which is closer in the essence of the creature, the system of reception and the system of bestowal. These 2 systems, through this long system that Amit showed us, and we will learn much further and get deeper in these systems in our next semester. These 2 systems build together the system called the soul, the neshama. And this is constructed from the absolute mixture of these 2 qualities, in a way that each and every part in the soul is a merging of these 2 qualities. You know, Dr. Lightman tells us it's like flour and water. You mix the 2, and there is dough. And within this dough, every inch along the way, there's this mingling of these 2 forces. In our desire, we create something that is unique and special. Just we learned about a certain cogwheel story in which everyone took care of each other and everything. In such a state, there is no independence yet from the Creator. And therefore, what the Creator is doing here for the creature, He creates a very special critical state, which is called the shattering. In simple words, what happens in this process? the desire of the creature receives an excessive dose of light, if we could say, or in other words, the creator blows up the whole desire of the creature in the whole future revelation that is supposed to be revealed in the final correction. And the creature, which is not ready for this and is all in all a vessel of reception, looks at this and he simply wants it for himself. The intention is completely for himself without consideration in the creator. Just give me and that's it. And I even enjoy that I'm taking it from you, even though I completely in antithesis towards you completely. And then what happens is that the soul truly falls from this sensation of unity. All of a sudden, the parts of the soul are revealed, are disclosed. We call it the sparks, or we can call it the 7 billion, but we're still not talking about the flesh and bones body, but there's a place where there's a spark, a desire for a connection with the Creator, mixed with the desire to receive for himself. Each and every of this spark as such falls from the sensation of unity, connection, harmony with the Creator to a sensation that we have here, the sensation of this world. This is what happens in more or less simple words in the shattering. We could take it as an example of a individualistic cell in the body, because Kabbalists always say that the state of our world is called death. Why is it death? I'm alive, I'm enjoying, I'm alive, but it's actually that sensation that a cell, an individualistic cell has in the body compared to the sensation that comes from the metabolism and all the state that happens as they intermingle with each other. And a single cell doesn't feel that feeling of life. But this thing is very unique and essential. Because what happens here is every cell starts to discern all these parts and their correction from the sparks, from that longing to the Creator, that increased desire towards the Creator. So from this shattered, separated state and a little bit of reception until the sparks that are completely within the sensations of reception and are belonging more to the system of reception. And from this point, at last, we can start the general correction that the Creator wants in free choice, and he himself, in this whole Lego that he received and took apart, he can start putting back together, like the Creator, this Lego. And these things have several meanings.
But before that, a quick question. John from England is asking, why did the Creator do this shattering, this breaking apart with, if the creature wasn't ready to receive the light yet?
That's a really good question. Here, actually, we're talking in a way that we know. Did you ever hear something about the sin of Adam and Eve, the tree of knowledge? This is what we're talking about. In the books of Kabbalah, this is called the sin of the tree of knowledge. Who caused this? Adam or some serpent there? No, it's clear that the Creator brought this. And why? What is the goal in this whole shattering and all this? And here, this is what Amit is about to explain to us.
John and everyone, look over here. Here we have the soul that was created in the world of Atzilut. It's a very special part of the collective will to receive. The only desire which was created, only one desire was created, but we said that it was created in 4 degrees, still vegetative, animate, and speaking. 4 degrees. And the most special degrees, eventually the 4th degree, we will learn more about it. This is where the general soul stems from, of the whole human species. Now, inside that soul, there are different souls, as Moshe explained very clearly. These are parts, desires, because other than desire, nothing else was created. You should bear in mind and keep it in your mind that desires which are more pure are closer to the quality of the soul, and desires which are more coarse, they are closer to the quality of reception. There's nothing wrong about it. Everyone has its own special role inside that system, which is whole, complete system. This whole system is a complete system, as we can see. But what's the problem? The problem is that those distant desires from the quality of bestowal, they cannot be connected to it. They can't feel eventually the Creator in His greatest degree, in the degree of Keter. This is why we have to reach a state where these parts, which are marked red, I will write here to make it clear, these are parts which belong to the quality of bestowal, and the parts in blue, they belong to the quality of reception more. And therefore, these parts, they have to mix. These two parts, reception and bestowal, they have to mix. This is the essence of the shattering. If we didn't have a mixture of those two parts, then the parts, the desires, the heavier, more coarse desires, the more egoistic desires, wouldn't have been able to reach adhesion with the Creator because of the huge detachment and the huge oppositeness. And this is why we have to come to the shattering. I see you want to say something.
Yes, there's a lot to say here. We're talking about the whole study of the 10 Sfirot and the preface of Baal HaSulam to the wisdom of Kabbalah and the writings of Ari. We're just going to say one thing, that first of all, we're talking about us. We need to remember it. It's not something distant out there. It's about us. Eventually, we need from a state that there was somebody, but this body, only one thing held. The connection between all these parts was held by the light. The parts themselves didn't want it. They didn't even know that they were parts. They didn't even know what connection there was between them. Yes? They didn't know what connection was between them. And after the shattering, thanks to this thing, now every part, both receptive part and bestowal part, could unite together. It's called to be included, integrated by each other, and each is important. Maybe it seems to us that the parts that are closer, bestowing, are probably closer to the Creator. No, because you need a desire. And if I don't have a desire, how will I want the Creator? From what? Where will I lack it from? I just want to give. I don't have any deficiency. Therefore, the work of inclusion between the parts begins. We call it the work and the order of the corrections. And even beyond that, it gives us, just like as I talked about the Legos, it gives the possibility to each of us to understand the work of creation, the thought of creation. What is this thing which is called to create one big special desire and unique desire from all these parts? So that, first of all, is the first meaning of the shattering. All of a sudden, there is a connection, just like we said, with the water and the flour, from this dough, between all the parts. There is no part in the soul that is not made up of these two forces, reception and bestowal. That's the first thing. The second thing, we want to explain about a very important law, which is called the law of root and branch. And I want to read to you an excerpt from the essence of the wisdom of Kabbalah, of Baal HaSulam, and he says to us like this. This is quote number 2. Each lower world is an imprint of the world above it. Hence, all the forms in the higher world are meticulously copied, in both quantity and quality, to the lower world. Thus, there is not an element of reality or an occurrence of reality in a lower world that you will not find its likeness in the world above it, as identical as two drops in a pond. And they are called root and branch. That means that the item in the lower world is deemed a branch of its pattern found in the higher world, being the root of the lower element, as this is where that item in the lower world was imprinted and made to be. This means that due to this inclusion between all the parts of the soul, as it is described to us in the study of the 10 Sfirot, its degree grabs takes hold of all the degrees, meaning the parts according to their closeness, to the degree of their closeness, their inclination to come back to their root and be in bestowal and in giving, they are closer to the world of Ein Sof. If you could show here, the world of Adam Kadmon, here are the parts that are more with the inclination to give, and the parts that are lower down are the parts that are more reception. What occurred here now, because of this endless inclusion, there is a connection between all the parts, and this connection is expressed in the form of a branch and root, or we could say the cause and the consequence, or press, and where we put an emboss into something and we get the result, which is the lower world. We will go here and see also that there's a true inversion, an opposite between one degree and the other, but that is later on. This law is one of the, or I would even say the most important law that we have in the wisdom of Kabbalah, through which, thanks to, we can do this whole spin and this whole thing that we can do in the wisdom of Kabbalah. And you did a little diagram here, so maybe you want to express it.
It's not so much of a drawing, but in order to give you a visual example to make it clear what Moshe explained and what Baal Sulam writes, you remember the first definition we spoke of? What is the wisdom of Kabbalah? How does it start it? It's an order of roots. An order of roots on way of cause and effect. So what is the idea of the order of roots? First of all, we can understand that we're talking here about a very organizing principle. The word order means that there's a certain element that goes from a cause to a consequence, something that is in potential to something that is in practice, and for some reason there is a consequence, and this is the whole thing, meaning from one thought, eventually from one force. We will discuss it more, what it means of this single force, because as Kabbalists say, eventually we come and we attain that there is only one force, unique force and special force in the world, and that force splits up. It splits up in a general way into two forces, reception and bestowal, and organize a very complicated system with endless details of roots and branches, where everything that is above is considered to be closer to the quality of bestowal. That is called root, and the lower thing from it, its consequence, will be called a branch. That consequence will be called a branch for the root above it. So we see that from the upper root, from the one source, many roots and branches split up. Actually, it's an order of roots, forces. Okay, this is this picture of opposite embroidery which exists behind this matter, behind this reality. We think that this is life, but there are forces, systems of forces, concealed forces, which activate each and every detail that we see in our world. So you remember those Shimot we spoke of before? Let me erase it with your permission. The names of the world. It doesn't matter now. And now all these reshimot that exist in potential inside the desire, now we see them that they spread up here.
And these Reshimot, in simple words, it's like Baal Sulam says, it's all the details in reality and all the incidences, meaning all the cases that occur to us in life at any moment, in any given second. Everything comes to us from above. What is the meaning of the law of root and branch? The meaning is that, first of all, that the bestowal is one directional. It's like one way. We can draw that. It's starting to become a little overbearing, the diagram there. So very sharp, it's a one-way thing. And we lost audio for a second, sorry. Uh-oh. Oh. No internet. Must be. You sure?
רואים את התוצאות. כן. אדם, חיה, אני יודע, מכונית, סליחה על הציור, הברזתי משיעורי ציור. מכונית, כדור הארץ וכו'.
Okay, so we have roots here, a car, an animal, a human being. So everything that happens comes from above, and here we have the consequences. What does it mean? If I want to change something in my life, any change we want to do, from a global political change down to my life, if we really want to bring about a change, I can change it here in the level of this life. And we see that it doesn't really work. Rather, I have to rise to the level of the roots and change things there. I will give you an example. When I was a little boy, I had next to my school, there was a deserted tractor, but big one, with a shovel. And we used to climb on it and play on it. And I was 7 years old, and I thought to myself, I said, we have to drive it. And as a brilliant guy in the branch, I said, okay, if we will break the glass that protects the speedometer and we'll start moving it, then the tractor will drive. We couldn't break it, it was plastic, it was hard, and we were weak. But of course, it wouldn't drive because the speedometer is a result. And in order to influence it, we have to rise to the degrees of the roots. It could be a switch or a key, and then the tractor will drive. There are many examples. Amit spoke about the embroidery, but this is the first meaning of it. The second meaning of the connection between the root and the branch in all the degrees is that there is a connection. The ending of every degree, of every world, is the beginning of the next world. There is a connection, a very strong connection. And that means that we can rise through up the worlds, we can understand each other. Souls from above can pull up souls from below. There can be an interaction between the parts. So we spoke about it. Keep it in mind. We will come back to it many times. Now we want to see how all the sequence of these roots, these laws and rules, how it all comes to be in our world, in the development of the desire, and even more so in the development of the method of Kabbalah. We have questions? Yeah, perhaps now it's a good time because we spoke about bestowal and reception. And Joshua from Paris is asking, he says the following: in order to be able to bestow, first of all, we have to receive. So when do we understand or when do we become aware to the fact that we receive what Kabbalists are calling light? This is exactly the topic of the lesson. It's amazing. Enough and restrain yourself for half an hour. We want to talk about it, but we want to come to it in a structured and organized way. And that question of how do we work with that thing called light is the question. I don't think you understand how that question is exactly it. This is exactly the point. It is a question that we deal with not only now, and even when we answer this question in 30 or 45 minutes from now, we will come to see that we will ask that question and we will come up with more profound and scrutinized questions as we go. Your question is, how do we make contact with the light? That is the question of life, actually. What else? Perhaps
maybe another question from Slav from Brak. He says, how can I connect with my root? That's also the same thing. Because the truth is, to receive the light, there's a paradox. But we will talk about this. How to connect to the root. We will touch upon this too. But I'll ask you, Slava, for the time being, maybe you can hold on to this. The question is not how. The question is, Do I have such a desire, a true desire? Would I really want to be connected to the root? Oh, I heard that it's kind of nice, that maybe it'll be good there or something in the root, so why not? Do I want? And then, what does it mean that I want to connect to the root? So let's not ask the questions, but we'll talk about this.
And what is my root anyway? That too is a question, Slava. In order to connect to some root, I probably need to know it. What I'm connecting to. There is a question here, a more deeper question here. He tells me in order to connect to the root, my root, the root of my soul, to discover myself, I don't know it, I don't know the Creator either. I want to connect to the Creator. How do I connect with Him? We mentioned it in the previous lessons, but this is also something to think of. How do we make contact with the light and discover our root in a very practical and a very humane kind of way?
So let's really see how this method developed that helps us discover the root. We'll do an interlude and we will continue.
Okay, חברים, אז...
Okay, friends, so what actually did this shattering do? This shattering eventually brought bringing these sparks, these longings, this desire for connection with the light, and it enters in all the shattered vessels and the degree of this world. And this process of corrections in our world is all in all the cataloging of these parts. We started with sparks that are really burning and that you almost don't need to do anything in order to correct them, let's call it that way, or for them to awaken. And those parts will help later the next parts, the sparks that are less, we'll call them less scrutinized. And thus, until we finish the order of correction, until we reach the most powerful of desires. And our spiritual DNA begins to spread and open anew. And maybe you will, for the time being, will draw it because you're drawing it. So maybe you can.
This is how it came.
Okay, next lesson I will draw. The spiritual DNA begins to spread anew, and it starts from the purest of the Reshimot, from the greater sparks we will call them. And actually, this DNA starts to spread and occur through the influence of the light, the general light. And thus, upon this earth of ours, a person lives, dies, lives and dies through dozens of incarnations. And as his desire develops, he starts to ask himself, what is this all for? We live, we die, where is this all going? What happened before I came here? What is about to happen afterwards? And doesn't receive an answer, and then again continues this story. But as these Reshimot from each incarnation, and we will talk about the matter of incarnations, as they accumulate in this desire, the lack of ability to get meaning, to reach the root for these questions, then a person starts to ask, well, then what's the point of my life? What's the meaning of my life? What for is all this? And then he starts to want and to yearn and to investigate and research this force or this system which manages him, which is supreme to him. Because if there was no opera, then apparently he himself would be able to decide about his life. But there are laws or rules that operate upon him and define his life. So he asks, what's his part in this whole essence? And truly, those that awaken first and want to discover the root are those who have the most powerful sparks, that even the smallest light that illuminates, they just awaken. And from them, actually, the first Kabbalists arrived. I see you have a beautiful picture here.
To continue?
Yes, of course.
So what did we do here? We did exactly the same thing. Moshe is talking and I'm drawing, okay? So, the soul that was created, basically after the shattering, as we have learned, we have reached a state where we are in some development of the matter of this world, and from the state here, where the development begins, we see that the same Reshimot emerge according to the order of development, according to the exact degrees of the seal, vegetative, animate, and speaking. But in that same soul, I will draw it blue, there are special Reshimot, special organs in this special general complete body which is called Adam Harishon. We should write down this name. Adam Harishon, the first Adam. This is how the soul is called like.
And it is called as such from the word Adam in Hebrew to be similar to the upper. Adam is from the word similar. That's the desire of the soul to come into adherence with the Creator. That's why it's called Adam.
Yeah. And from here we can see that in every stage in the development of humanity, there is a certain part of that collective soul which was broken, that knows from the root of its soul, it is able to correct itself and to be the spiritual guide of that generation. One. And two, to adapt the method and to convey the light in such a way that later on they will be able to pass it onward to the next generations. And from here we see the great spiritual teachers of the wisdom of Kabbalah, where every one of them had appeared at a certain point throughout human's history, and every one of them comes from a certain specific place in the soul of Adam Harishon. The first one is called Adam. There's Adam Harishon that we might know from the stories of the Pentateuch. But once again, we're not talking about someone who walked in a place called paradise. We'll talk about it soon, and we'll give you some explanation of what are these names. Rather, what we're talking about is about a human being, someone who walks onto the first one on the face of the earth, where actually out of his special place in the soul of Adam Harishon, out of the purity of his soul, he simply discovered the nature of creation. He discovered the Creator. He lived in it, and he was actually the first Kabbalist. From that moment, we begin the count of years according to the Kabbalist calendar. But this first Adam, he was the first Kabbalist on the face of the earth. And that happened 5,000 years, 774 years ago. What else is special here? Every Kabbalist, every great Kabbalist that appears, we're talking especially about Kabbalists who are the pillars, the foundations of the development of the method, the foundations of the structure of the soul of Adam Harishon. Every such Kabbalist expressed his spiritual revelation in a book. From here we understand that a book, it's not just some manual script. It is a branch of that root which is called the spiritual revelation. From here, the meaning of the book is very special, and we'll talk about it more. But the first book that Adam wrote is called Raziel the Angel. That is the first book. Who came next? My throat is a bit dry.
So I will draw. That same Adam that he talked about in Raziel the Angel, actually, it was clear to him and to his students, he told them about the system, what he felt in the system, by equating his form to it, and he felt this. He felt it. He felt his role in the system, why he was the first, who he had to pass this on to, and what the essence of this whole system is, and who needs to be revealed. And that was the essence. That was Adam. After him, 20 generations go on with delivering it from teacher to student, and the next big part of the soul which awakens is called, in the name of the Kabbalah, Abraham. And this Abraham began to implement this system by creating a group of Kabbalists, as he took them out of the Babylonians, Yes, he was there with in ancient Babylonia, and there they joined him and joined his point, and he started to realize this connection through the connection, the unity between this group of Kabbalists. They have reached attainment together, and what they attained and felt in the connection amongst them. Yes, I want to show you here in this system, in this connection between them, what they attained and revealed. They wrote a book, and a book they wrote was called the Book of Creation. You may have heard it, the 32 paths of revelation and so on. And this is the Book of Creation that he has written. Now, what happens from this point is very critical, because actually, if you remember, we talked about two axes of development. One axis, well, we actually know it. It's the known axis of development of our desires through food, sex and family, money, honor, knowledge, and so on. This is the axis which is for those who have not followed the group of Abraham. We call them Babylonians. Yeah, we'll call them Babylons, like Teletubbies, Babylonies. And these are the Babylonians who followed the regular development. And Abraham and his group of Kabbalists went in a completely different development. They attained, with their desire, spiritual degrees, and they constantly went higher and higher to the shattering, which we will talk about. But they did completely different development of attaining all the degrees of the soul. Yes? Meaning they moved from Neshama, Chaya, Yechida, like this. This whole group which developed throughout all the generations. And this group continued with its revelations. It grew. This group Abraham called Yashar Kel, meaning those that have an inclination to reach the Creator. Yashar Kel being direct to the Creator. And the next Kabbalist that was born, or that has been revealed, disclosed, Amit wrote here, a very nice name, Moshe. Yes, this is the next Kabbalist, and with a group of his Kabbalists, he writes a composition, which is actually, he takes us from the restriction until the final correction, which we will see what that is, but he called this composition the Torah, the Pentateuch, the Torah meaning the light. After that, the next Kabbalist that appears, and my throat is dry now.
Rashbi, so what do we see here? Between all the Kabbalists that we mentioned their names there are thousands of more people who had attained spirituality, which are called Kabbalists. But we're just talking about Kabbalists who had adapted the method every time by writing a certain book. Soon we will explain what is that writing and what does this book contain and what makes it relevant to our generation. But they adapted that method to our generation, and this is why they are such pillars. After Moses, there is a great Kabbalist who had appeared in the period of a great destructions 2,000 years ago. His name is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rashbi. He wrote a book, I'm sure you heard of it. It's called the Book of Zohar. The Book of Zohar, we will talk about it a lot during this semester. It's a book that was written specifically for our generation 2,000 years ago, and this is why it was concealed and hidden. And now it is a critical book in the correction of humanity and in us coming closer to the Creator. After Rashbi, till our days, there are two more Kabbalists which are very, very meaningful. The first one is the Ari. He lived in the 16th century, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. He wrote The Tree of Life. And Baal HaSulam, who appeared after him in the end of the 19th century, 1894. This is when he was born. He passed away in 1954. And he is actually the last great Kabbalist in the chain of all those Kabbalists, a chain of Kabbalists. You remember, as we said, order of roots and branches, where all the parts of him, all the souls are connected like with a chain of Reshimot, a chain. And therefore, the one standing at the end of the chain, and the whole wisdom, the entire light, the entire method, the entire knowledge, he drains to his writing. This is Baal HaSulam. He is the main scientist of the wisdom of Kabbalah. He writes and adapts the method to our generation. He is like, all the spiritual knowledge is poured through him to humanity, which open up her mouth like chiclets to some path, to be told where we can go to when we are losing our path. Of course, the two Kabbalists that continue the path of Baal HaSulam and interpret in a very practical way, and we'll talk about it more because this is very important, because Baal HaSulam is like a scientist. He organizes the theory of the wisdom of Kabbalah. He brings this to us and brings this to us for implementation. Those who explain to us how to implement it, because also as a scientist, when I was in school, I really liked biology. So I got a protocol how to get the DNA of the tobacco. But if there wouldn't have been someone who had explained this to me, my doctor, she was Ona Livne, and if I didn't see for my very own eyes how to do it, I wouldn't know just from reading this protocol how to extract a DNA from a plant. I would have known. Therefore, we have Kabbalist teachers who take the method of Baal HaSulam and interpret it. So this is Rav Baruch Shalom Alevi Ashlak, the son and follower of Baal HaSulam, and his student Rav Michael Lightman, whom we study with.
Another important thing about the chain of Kabbalists, before we go to Tal for the next question, we have a really hyped lesson today. But actually, why did Kabbalists continue to write books? What wasn't the book of Raziel the angel enough? Was the book of creation not enough? Each Kabbalist adapted it's to the souls for the type of sparks that were in his generation. That's how Moshe wrote something. He wrote the Torah that was suitable for his generation. They wrote this. He did this for the attainment of spirituality, and this is how they did it throughout the generations. And the second thing is that they didn't just write something and wrote about their feelings. They operated within the system of souls. They corrected the connections here and enabled all the sparks that are still of reception. They opened the opening for correction. They actually did, we could say, an upgrades in the system. For example, once you could reach the wisdom of Kabbalah only after a person, there were very harsh conditions after he would study the 7 wisdoms, science, art, and folk and dancing, and
mortifications.
Torments. Because it was very easy to get free of the will to receive. You just do some torments, and they just did an upgrade in which we don't need to do torments anymore. So this is what's special about the Kabbalists. The method moves from one sage who is authorized to his student, and this way they are both in spiritual attainment. This is what we call student, and he brings him his revelations in a very simple, pure, and direct manner to the student, and this is how it continues from generation to generation till this day. Question, Stan?
Yes, probably what this story with all the names in the chain of Kabbalists. So I have 2 questions here I would like to connect. a question by Rafael from Spain, and a question of Nick from London. Nick is asking, what is the Reshimot and what is the connection between the Reshimot to incarnation? And also the second question is related to incarnations. So he's asking, if we feel that we have reached to this world in order to do something, and let's say we don't do it so well, does it mean that we have to come and do it once again? And the Creator, is he the one who implants this plan in us? Can't we get along without him? There are many questions. Reshimot, we will repeat it again. It's very confusing. We are in lesson about the perception of reality. We will discuss it well. This is the same spiritual information which is registered inside our memory as a code that activates it from that chattering, from the state where we will filled with light, down to a state where we feel ourselves detached from the Creator. This whole process where gradually the light was emptied from the desire, emptied and emptied and emptied from the desire. Every time it is registered inside the desire, a certain information about that specific moment. That information comes to be in matter. When the desire starts expressing itself, scrutinizing itself, looking for the same contact it used to have with the Creator, he doesn't do it on his own accord, the desire. Now we're talking now about a person who is dressed in a desire. Rather, he does it out of the same inner core of Reshimot, which is already in him. And now comes to be, is expressed like a film in a camera. Just imagine that from above downward, we have filmed a movie. And now in our evolution, in this circle process we're going through, we project it, we put it on. And our whole life, from the moment the Creator did like this, he activated the camera, and now we live our lives in this movie of the Reshimot, which emerge and emerge and emerge and emerge and emerge. And this is why we understand that the matter of incarnations is also, let's put it gently, it's irrelevant up to the same state where the point of the heart is revealed. That moment in which we start scrutinizing in a clear manner our choice between our ability to come closer to the Creator or not to come closer to Him, to stay away from Him.
And we need to be very precise here. The incarnation of the souls. The souls is what develops from our point in the heart. We talked about that. It's a desire, a great desire, which is connected with other points to be resembling its root. That's what we call neshama, our soul. It's a degree of attainment, of a sensation in the upper world. And from that point, there's truly a certain cascading or incarnation, which is the different parts within that soul. Are we going to hear another question?
A quick question about Abraham. What did he discover? What did he write about? This book, you called him the book of Yetzirah, the book of creation. Is it Bereshit, the first part in the Pentateuch? What is it? It's not Bereshit, it's not the first part book in the Pentateuch, it's a totally different book. The book of Bereshit, Genesis, is a book written by Moses. He discovered what all Kabbalists had discovered. He discovered that by people uniting, by realizing the law of love upon the gap that exists between them, we can experience adhesion with the only single force that exists in nature, which is called the Creator. Everyone interpreted it differently. Many words can be written about it, but it all speaks about the entire Pentateuch. All the scripts, they all speak about one thing only. How a person, how do you, every one of us, can implement our life in order to reach that sublime, exalted goal for which we were created.
So let's take now the time for a little interlude, and we'll talk truly about what the Kabbalists brought in their generations from generation to generation. Okay, so we're going to have an interlude, and we'll return. So, the spiritual world, we don't feel it. it is concealed from us, and we don't know where the source of thoughts and desires we have, and all of a sudden we feel this or something else, and many things. And it's also very difficult for a person to feel, to an individual, is to feel that all that's occurring here, the whole order of roots and the laws and the rishimot and everything, it doesn't have any purpose towards himself. It's just kind of like a movie. But rather, the purpose is so that we will develop some kind of desire and attitude towards ascending and to want to adhere to the Creator. That's the whole goal. How do we reach such a thing? Who will help us with that? That's the exact thing that the writings of the Kabbalah, which are the Kabbalists, left behind for us. The whole problem is that they're writing about one thing, and they write it in a very specific language, and we, all of us, from our perception, from our understanding in this world, as we look at this world and we see, there are rocks and trees and who knows, animals and what else we see, and we think that they're talking about what we're feeling. And thus, as we said in the first lesson, there's about 8,000 opinions in the Amazon, what each book in the Kabbalah says, and meditations and yogas and interpretations. And Kabbalists truly write about their revelations, about their pure revelation in the spiritual world. So who knows what they're talking about, what information they're exchanging between them, what they're talking about. And let's take examples. Simply as an example, I read in the Torah, in the Pentateuch, I read some story about someone who had a stick, and with his stick he hit on the water, and the water opened. They did even Hollywood movies about this, and about Noah they did now also. And I read, it seems to me that that's how it is. Another example, we talked about this, those two who
with the fig leaves,
kind of running with like a fig leaf in the field, Adam and Eve, and some snake that's running after them to cause them to eat a fruit.
A talking serpent.
Yes, a speaking feet with 4 feet, and this is what I see. And I don't want to talk about the imagery of the Zohar. Whoever read the Zohar, there's imageries from which all the imaginations and all the things and all kinds of demons and spirits and all that. We've seen many movies made out of this. The industry is truly thriving from that. But this actually is our understanding of what they're writing. So the question is as such: do the Kabbalists, maybe according to our understanding, wrote about some kind of abstract reality that doesn't really exist? Maybe a world of symbols, of theoretical things, like many learned people that did doctorates in different philosophies. What are they talking about? So what are they talking about?
It's a very critical question. It's an essential question, because basically from here stems the beginning of the confusion. What is the story? If on the one hand this is an allegory or some imaginations which are materialized, or on the other hand, if it's not the case, are these theories or such abstract things? So Baal Salam gives an answer for it. He gives a very clear answer, and as usual, he writes in a very precise manner, and we will read the whole chapter from the essence of the wisdom of Kabbalah, which is called Abstract Names. And this is what he writes. Many believe that all the words and names in the wisdom of Kabbalah are a kind of abstract names. This is so because it deals with godliness and spirituality, which are above time and space, where even our imagination has no hold of. For this reason, they have decided that surely these matters speak only of abstract names, or even more sublime and exalted than abstract names, as they are completely and from the outest devoid of elements that are imagined. But that is not the case. On the contrary, Kabbalah uses only names and appellations that are concrete and real. It is an unbending rule for all Kabbalists that anything we do not attain, we do not define by a name and a word. Everything we do not attain, we do not define by name and a word. This is the meaning of this paragraph. It's very simple. 1. Every word written in Kabbalah books, original or authentic Kabbalah books, is a word that is engraved in rock. It is a word written from spiritual attainment. Spiritual attainment, we spoke about it in the previous lessons. Baal HaSulam defines it in the rest of this paragraph as the most exalted degree of understanding. And by the way, we recommend to read this whole article, The Essence of the Wisdom of Kabbalah, and we'll talk about it in the end of the lesson also.
We sent that on Facebook to all our friends, and we really recommend for everyone to go through the whole thing.
Meaning, if now we are in a certain process where we acquire knowledge, two people are sitting here and a woman, and we acquire knowledge. You receive knowledge from the books, from the teachers, and gradually that knowledge becomes an understanding in you. The process that should happen, where eventually this understanding will be molded and develop into such a degree that it won't be an understanding in your intellectual, it won't be an emotional understanding, rather it will break through you into a state that you yourself, you will be that knowledge, you will live in it, you will merge it with it. Like there is no difference between a musician who is in ecstasy with the music and the instrument that is playing, they're all one. This is where we want to be, that whoever studies, that student, each and every one of us, unites with the text and with the teacher, the one who wrote the book, up to a degree that they all unite into one point called the Creator, Keter, Shoresh, root, the origin, the source. That is called a spiritual attainment. And only when a Kabbalist reaches that point, only then does he name the phenomenon that he feels. He can give it a real name to this phenomenon that he feels. That is the point of abstract names. Now, what name does he give? So you remember that we said that basically here we have our world, and this is the spiritual world. And from that world, there are roots coming down to our world. And every degree that a Kabbalist attains is in a process that from this place he's in, after you have attained it, he identifies in that place, he receives an ability. Not every Kabbalist, a Kabbalist who gets permission to write, but he receives an ability to express the spiritual root in a form where the root indicates to something in our world. This is the matter of names which are seemingly abstract, but actually they are very tangible, they are very practical. So a Kabbalist, he did a work of elation, he investigated his reality, the reality of the nature of the will to receive. He had reached a certain degree, he is in it, he scrutinizes it, and he calls it by name. And that name, I need to know what to do with it now. Are there any questions?
Yes, Patrick is very curious. He says, nevertheless, how do we know that all these books contain the precise method to reach the spiritual world? That's an excellent question, because this is truly the second meaning of the writings of Kabbalah. Amit just talked about this moment, about anything that they write about, and we will reveal this as well. That is something that they used where they found a name that is in our common reality, but upon that name, they talk about an attainment that is in the most highest of degrees. In all the degrees, we talked about the law of the root and branch, and in a moment we will fill that explanation. The second thing is that Kabbalah is a science. It's not some theoretical thoughts. They talk about the revelations that they have found. And they wrote about this so that each and every one of us, and also the Kabbalists, will be able to, under the same conditions of desire, of pleasure, of deficiency, of connection, of longing, discover what they did. And thus the Kabbalists left behind their books and gave each of the Kabbalists the opportunity to ascend. And therefore, Kabbalists like the Ari write interpretations seemingly about the Book of Zohar. What does that mean? The Ari ascended upon the degree of the Book of Zohar and brought it down to the souls of his generation, such that they will be able to read and learn it. And Baal Sulam took the writings of Ari and took the Zohar, and even more brought it down to us. And that's called the Sulam commentary for the Book of Zohar, and this is what we read. So therefore, if we will do and carry out the instructions that the Kabbalists write us in the books, we will reach the same attainments, the same revelations, and the same feelings. Only what? From our angle.
Andrea from Germany says, if everything is predetermined from the highest degree, why to make an effort for?
Excellent question.
It's a classical question of a student, a developed student, a qualitative kind of student.
What's this whole spin for?
Why do we need this spin for? It is so natural. Our nature is to receive maximum pleasure with a minimum effort. Andrea, I don't know how long you live in this world for, if you're an adult or if you're young, if you have kids or not. But I assume that you also know that we acquire things in our world also by making an effort. When we make an effort, then we appreciate them. And when we don't put any effort, then we tend to disregard things and to relate to them as simple and transient things. The more I invest in something, the more I'm connected to it. And I don't want to give you a too deep question. I want to leave you with a scrutiny. We also remind you that the whole thing is to build a deficiency, the correct deficiency, and not to find some way to receive fulfillment, because the way to receive fulfillment is to organize the deficiency correctly. This is what we have. We're all created with a deficiency. Now, deficiency means that I need to find how do I build by myself a deficiency for bestowal. If I don't have an ability to understand what bestowal is, then I have to build it by myself. So what do I do by building such a deficiency by myself? Using this method and the guidance and all the means that we have, I acquire the same ways in which the Creator created the reality and broke it down. If I'm trying to put this puzzle together like a child, all of a sudden I discover the general picture that I myself built, not the one that built the puzzle. I feel that I built this picture myself. I made this picture. I put another piece and another piece together. So what if there was someone who filmed that picture and broke it down to pieces? I put it back together. Therefore, there is no creator without a creature. And from here we have a very profound meaning, and we will elaborate on that, of the matter of the effort or the exertion as we relate to it. Okay, we need to elaborate on that matter. So we're talking about this very special language discovered by Kabbalists in order to communicate with each other, to convey knowledges and the revelations of the spiritual world. So seemingly we can ask, how can it be? Everyone is in a different degree, and there's an inversion, a seal, and an imprint. And how can there be a connection between roots? A Kabbalist with the degree of Moses, how can they be in touch with a Kabbalist in another degree? And what can we understand anyway? So let's go back to the rule of root and a branch. There is a connection between all the degrees, all the details, even in our world, and all the incidents and all the causes, they have sublime roots in sublime worlds. What does it mean? It means that there is a common mechanism to all the worlds, to all the degrees. And what is that common mechanism? Our world. This is where we all are. And therefore, every Kabbalist could name a phenomenon by a code and to point through it to a phenomenon which is in the upper world. And just imagine, if we can see it on the diagram, we have three layers. We have a layer that we call a book of Kabbalah. And let's say we see here a bull or a cow or an ox, or what else do we have in the Pentateuch? A well, and so on. And such figures. When I read all that, let's draw my eye this way. When I read all that, what do I see? Pardon me for my drawing. A cow, it's more like a sheep. Okay, doesn't matter. I will put some stains on it so it will be a cow. Okay, so there's a cow, an ox. Let's draw some horns to it. What else? A well. And the Red Sea, and this is what I see. Why? Because I'm here in the level of this world. This is what I see. But a Kabbalist who is in the spiritual degree, he doesn't just see an ox. He sees degrees of the will to receive. He sees that a cow is a kind of a female, a kind of a desire to receive. An ox is a male. This is the will to bestow. He starts to see the relationship between the forces. Well is the source from where we draw, or from where all the souls draw from. So you might say that this middle slide is disappeared from him. He only sees that level, and we can continue this way in each and every world from the 5 worlds, all the way through. So Kabbalah engages only in relationship between souls, only in the connections of love and giving, and the more they get together, the creatures rise to the middle point of existence, which is the root. And this is what they attain. Actually, they attain the most exalted state where we were to start with. And this is also an answer to Andrea. They attain, they discover it, they feel it. Like we, all of us, hopefully, will feel the same reality. And from those things we can see how history, precisely from those mistakes, what things happened in history. When they write about Israel, don't tell anyone, because not many like to hear it, but someone who was necessarily born to a Jewish mother with an identity card, Israel, taking into consideration that Abraham was a Bedouin or someone who used to live in Babylon, Israel is Yeshar Kel, direct to the Creator. Everyone with such a tendency, such a longing to make contact with the Creator. Body, when we're talking about a body, this is a desire, this is the whole structure of the desire. Home, this is Malchut. A chair, a throne of honor, is the world of Bria. And each and everything, a woman is a female, meaning the will to receive, man is the will to bestow, but perhaps Tal, spiritually speaking, perhaps she's a man, a will to bestow, and I, Moses, spiritually speaking, I might be a woman. In that state, I want to receive. Could be. So from those things, many corruptions took place, a lot of hatred, thinking that one nation is more or less than another nation, many persecutes, and magia and red strings, a big industry, only because they were not in spiritual attainment. But we should also understand that not only these figures are like this. Also, Kabbalists, before they invented the language of the branches, there was another language talking about relationship between these forces of giving and bestowing. They took points, a roof, a leg, and with that thing, with their emotion, they started describing the relationship between the forces, meaning the formation of the soul. The letter Yud, for instance, and the tip of the Yud, which is the root, and in length, length it is Chasadim, and Vav, or the letter Aleph, which is diagonal, which is the merging between these two forces, and so on and so forth. This is how the language of Kabbalah was born. And many people also speak about gematria, all the situations the creature goes through in his Reshimo. The Kabbalists gave it formulas with numbers which describe the situation, the correct relationship of the creature, his situation, which desire he now has, which kind of light, what is about to clothe in him in the next degree, and so on and so forth. But they turned this into mysticism and fortune tellers as well. Now, back to our matter. We need to remember that the important thing to understand here is that every attempt to interpret the language of Kabbalah literally, the way it is, the stories themselves, either the letters or the relationship between the letters, perhaps the numbers standing behind the letters, the gematria, if we do it not out of spiritual attainment, that brings to a very great confusion. And from here pops a question, a very meaningful question. Hold on a minute. So in that case, so what should I relate to? You're saying that there are books written by Kabbalists. These books written by Kabbalists, basically, they are people like me and you, with a burning point in their heart. They have discovered the upper nature. They were in some spiritual attainment, inside a miraculous degree where they experience the entire reality and all the forces behind that, standing behind that reality, and writing it down. They're writing it down in a way that is expressed on a piece of paper, in lines, letters, forms. But what they write is a spiritual map. They write something from me who is under the spiritual attainment. They write down some roadmap, and this is why they're called guides. And if I take that map and read it, then I can know that I'm going from here to here, from here to here, and I make it to the Creator. But what is the problem then? I need to be in a spiritual attainment in order to read that map. That map is encoded. This is a spiritual code. So we, with the point in the heart awakening us, what do? What should we read? What do I do with all those books?
It's like, reading notes, There's people that can, read solfeggio or something like that, or shit like that. I look at that, and it looks to me like, ants on that, those 5 lines of the musical literature. And another person reads it, he feels music, he starts singing. A person sees a certain partiture of some Bach's concert, and he starts crying. And I look at it, and I see ants. I don't know what he's so impressed about it.
Or if you're a programmer, you see it some lines and you're so excited from the program that you just worked on.
So actually the paradox is that Kabbalists wrote it between them, amongst them, for those who are in attainment already, but how to reach this spiritual attainment. If I'm like them, I should be born already as righteous, a holy person. I was born in some spiritual attainment. It's a paradox. I'll never understand Kabbalah if I'm not in that.
So what do we need the books for? And you spoke about the Pentateuch before, and there are so many stories. What do they all mean?
That's exactly what we're asking. What for to study Kabbalah?
So it's a problem.
Let's remain with this question, a little interlude, and
we'll give you an answer shortly.
Well,
Tal, you're also concerned.
Yeah, I'm concerned because we spoke about the Pentateuch and all kind of signs. So there's a question by Patrick. He's asking, will it help me if I will study Hebrew?
No.
Patrick,
the answer is no, as they say in French. No.
It won't help you. It won't help you.
Yeah, it'll even benefit less. And why? Because especially those of us who do know Hebrew, and we open the books of Kabbalah, the books of Baal HaSulam, of Rabash, Baruch Ashlag, and others, we know exactly these Hebrew words automatically, just like we showed in this diagram. Instead of seeing, let's say, the story, Rabbi Shimon went on his donkey with his student, when he came off that, they met some snake there. I immediately see these pictures. It's preferential not to even know the language, and from that to know that they're talking about spiritual forces. In general, what do I do with this? That's exactly what we want to touch upon. So our question is, for Patrick and all the friends, so why study the wisdom of Kabbalah? What is all this for?
And Baal HaSulam wrote about it in the introduction to the study of the 10 Sefirot. He writes about it in 155 in the study of the 10 Sefirot. After he writes so much and prepares us to reading the study of the 10 Sefirot, at the very end of this glorious, very special introduction, he writes an item that folds in it the entire meaning of the whole study of the wisdom of Kabbalah, and a very important foundation in the understanding. We will read most of it, and then we will explain it. So let's listen. Baal HaSulam writes this. Why did Kabbalists necessitate every person to study the wisdom of Kabbalah? Exactly what we asked. However, there's a great thing about it, worthy to be publicized, because there is a remedy, wonderful remedy for those who engage in the wisdom of Kabbalah. And even though they do not understand what they study, but out of their strong desire and yearning to understand what they're reading, they awaken upon themselves the lights that surrounds their soul. Therefore, also when the vessels are lacking, when a person engages in that wisdom and mentions the names, the lights, and the vessels that his soul has relevance to, they immediately shine upon him to a certain degree. Only without clothing in the internality of his soul, because he is lacking the qualified vessels to receive them. However, the illumination that he gets time after time, while he engages in the study of Kabbalah, he draws upon himself a grace from above, and they impure upon him abundance and purity, which bring a person closer to come to his wholeness.
Wondrously, the answer to our question of how we reach spiritual attainment, what surprises us is the books of wisdom of Kabbalah themselves, which we study, which we say are the books of Baal HaSulam, the writings of Rav Baruch Shalom Levi Ashlag, Rabash, and though they're talking about some other reality, especially their study, which the Kabbalists have compelled us to and obligated us to read, are the means for us to have spiritual attainment. What does Baal HaSulam say? There is an amazing remedy or virtue. What is a virtue? It is the truth is it's beyond the boundaries of our ego and our attainment. But we could say that a virtue is a wondrous way which the Kabbalists prepared for us to connect to the spiritual system despite our desire at the moment not being developed or ready for it. They have created such a system for us so we will be able to connect specifically through the books, or already in an introduction to the perception of reality, what appears to me as a book. And let's see what the formula for this is, what Baal HaSulam writes for us. He says, first of all, at the time when one engages in this wisdom, 2, as he doesn't understand what he's reading or what he's studying, we need to see what that means. 3, but he has a yearning and a great desire to understand what he's studying, then it is worthwhile for him to awaken the lights that surround his soul. We need to understand, dear friends, this is only the scrutiny of the purpose of the study. Why I want to study this. As we said, we could say to be understanding, wise, to be respectable, to be some guru. What am I lacking? Do I have a deficiency, and what kind of... He doesn't understand what he's learning. And what does this mean? Though it seems to me, this is an answer also to Patrick, who asked, that as if I understand, he's talking about this world and these forces, desire, it's like in my mind, it seems to me, like I understand, like any study that I was used to thus far. I am making the best of my efforts to tell myself, you don't understand. You are not in this attainment that they're writing about, despite the fact that they're using the same words which you recognized previously from your whole life. But you are not in the attainment, in those roots that they're pointing upon. This has to be. Why? Because otherwise I'm reading some book and I'm sucking these words into my understanding, into my desire, and I calm myself down. I read a book, a page in the book of Zohar. Thank you very much. Everything is good. And the third thing, specifically, from me trying to nullify the feeling that I understand and know and want to know, but how does he write it? He has a great desire and attempt to understand what he's learning. Meaning somehow embroidered in a person is a great deficiency that he doesn't have from his own might. What do we look at? We look at some point that brought us here together to this course, but something embroiders in the person. It kind of accumulates this desire, which is truly lacking to be in the feeling of this sensation that they talked about. Only that I want. I don't care about this study. I don't care about the words. Give me that. If a person holds on to these things, he awakens, the Kabbalists say, the lights which surround his soul. Now, let's not get into imaginations. Oh, there's some lights there, or I don't know what people are already imagining. Kabbalah, after all, is a science. And we are talking about the fact that the light is an absolute rest. What is lacking is only the kli, the vessel, the desire to receive it. The light is awaiting us to develop a desire which will clothe us from our choice, from our desire, a desire that we create with our desire. There's a desire, the light clothes there. Why does he not feel it? Why is it not clothing there? I don't have the suitable desire for it yet. I'm not in equivalence of form yet. And therefore the light is not clothing it. But the moment we develop the desire, through the study of the books of wisdom Kabbalah, immediately that feeling jumps to me. That's what they're talking about. It's like that. I feel it. I live it. I read it, and it truly echoes in me. This word, I feel it in my whole body. The light is coming down. It's going up. I feel it in all my essence and in the connections between us. And on the contrary, all of a sudden, the feelings that I feel, I can give words to. By the way, Many Kabbalists took these words out of their sensation, out of their feeling, even though they didn't even know Hebrew. Meaning the words and the feelings are something very natural and absolute. And what remains for me in order to receive this vessel? The light is ready. Just bring something. Just bring me what I'm missing. It's only called a deficiency for a deficiency, or a deficiency prior to the deficiency. Meaning, why do I not have such a burning desire for spirituality? It's enough for me to even have that little bit. Why am I not lacking spirituality? Even if it would be small. It would be nice if I would be lacking spirituality, yes, for the upper. Even that, during the study, the reading of the wisdom of Kabbalah already influences me, already awakens the lights. And what do these lights do? They grow my desire. And I see you drew something again.
I have to. You're talking and I'm drawing.
There's Philip here who really has to know. Now, as we're studying in this classroom, are we drawing these lights?
Of course. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Now we are just starting to understand what we're doing here and what we're studying. On the one hand, we study the foundation, the elements, the basics of the wisdom of Kabbalah. We learn them intellectually, we feel different things, but on the other hand, and now we're just starting to open it up. We advance gradually. Now we're starting to clarify by ourselves together why are we studying for, how to tune ourselves before and during the lesson. And I want to talk about that place of Moshe's explanation and to complete it with the drawing that we have made. If this is each and every one of us, and we have a target that we need to achieve, and this is a spiritual target, meaning that target is spirituality. But what is the problem? As we have said, we cannot imagine, we cannot describe, we cannot draw what spirituality really is. It is above our ability to imagine. So we have a target here which is called the Creator, and this is what we want to achieve. And we read in books of Kabbalah, and we develop, we're going through lessons like the lessons we're having now, and we think that we develop, this is the kli we develop in, it is called our mind and our emotion, and we think that this is where we develop in that kli. But what happens? During the reading, that book actually is a writing of Kabbalists who are in the upper world, in the internal world. And we read from here and we draw the light. And the light performs a work on us during the study. We don't see it, we don't feel it, we don't know how, but something is built in us in a new way. And we reach a state where all of a sudden, from this kli, from this vessel, let's do this way so that I will understand, a new kli is built in us, in which we can really receive the light. Because this is a spiritual vessel, a vessel of bestowal.
I recommend that at this point, we're going to leave you for a moment. I feel like you have right now many questions. Wait, what's he saying? What are they saying? What now? It's fine. Specifically, this throwing from side to side, because this lesson, as I said, it's a very critical lesson, because here, after 3 lessons that we wrote, that we went through, we're discovering actually what's the purpose of the study, what the wisdom of Kabbalah is, how we actually influence our spiritual development with our hands through the connection we have with the Kabbalists, with the help of the desire which we develop together. So it's fine what we're understanding, what we're feeling right now. It's kind of a change of a paradigm. And let's, for the time being, see a clip with our Rav Dr. Lightman, and he will explain to us about the drawing of the surrounding light.
What is exactly the light that reforms? What does it mean that we draw the light that reforms?
I don't know what light is. I don't know what it's reforming in me, what it's bringing back to me. I just see the results as I all of a sudden see more, feel more, understand more, become more above my ego, more conceding, more being associated with spiritual values. I identify with them more. And these changes which I feel in me, I also feel that they are changes which occurred by an alien force or foreign force, that I didn't do them, that these values, the understanding and feeling that I have now been in, that I'm in right now, they weren't there in me before. They weren't there. They weren't in me, and therefore I cannot associate that with myself, that it's me. But rather it's as if here, what occurs here is my Michael, and he's existing here anew. From where all of a sudden, it's like I actually feel this difference between what I was and what I am now as a new birth in me. Something that previously there was no reason for it, and all of a sudden it's born. Some discernment, some quality, something new. And therefore, I say that this occurs by the light, by the upper light, the Creator. It doesn't matter what you want to call it, but He did this to me.
There is something seemingly not explained, irrational, sudden in this wisdom, which is very rational. It's a science. It says the sublime science of the laws of nature. And all of a sudden, Kabbalists come and they write that even if you don't understand, it's fine. By this, you draw a light that surrounds our soul and brings about a correction. And that is called Sgula, a remedy. And seemingly it is not clear. But actually, it's pretty simple, because what remedy means, and of the light which is embedded, encoded inside the scripts of Kabbalah, it is simply our inability, those who are called the lower ones because we are in the lower world, to identify the connection between the root and the branch, between the source to its consequence. This is the whole matter of remedy. The moment I don't identify the connection between the source and the consequence, I call it a miracle. If we would have brought here into the studio a person who lived in our world 5,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, and we would go for a round with him, for everything he would say, a miracle, it's a miracle, this is a remedy. Meaning, how can it be? Suppose that you open a faucet and water come out of it. How can it be? It's a remedy to open a faucet and have water coming out of it, right? Because he's used to water from the river or from the lake, water from nature. But all of a sudden, from the wall, water are coming out. Even more so, if we would put a person alone in front of the faucet and tell him, and he's very thirsty, and we tell him, here in the faucet there are water, he would look at the faucet, and what would he have done? Without any guidance, what would he have done? Would he turn it around naturally? Perhaps he would sing to it, perhaps he would dance around it. So here we understand the need for guidance, a guidance in order to implement that principle of virtue or remedy, meaning it also exists in our world. This is not something which is unperceivable. There is a beautiful example I heard from Rav once. He says there is a phenomenon of a fly that bites you and causes a wound that is called Shoshanat Yericho. It's a pretty nasty wound. If you're bitten by this fly, it leaves you with a scar, and it's pretty serious. And you know how they cure this wound? Tal, you know?
Tell me about it. I'm curious.
To put a red rag on this wound. Ask doctors. They will tell you. Put a red rag around it. Now, they don't know how to explain it. They will tell you it's a remedy, it's a virtue. But it is a known fact that in order to cure that wound called the Jericho rose, the best cure for it is to put red rag around it.
And then a miracle occurs.
But this is because we don't know how to connect the action to the result. This is exactly it. So we make an action, but the action has to be rational. Now let's go back to the matter of how do we prepare ourselves to the lesson. The more we operate more correctly in terms of our direction, our desire, our emotion, our mind, our intellect, then we draw the light more. How does it happen? In the first stages, we do not know. Later on, in the stages of spiritual attainment, everything is clear to us, everything is revealed to us.
But we can say one thing. We need to awaken in us from all the deficiencies, 359 degrees around us, money, honor, and our wives, and all these things that even now, during the study, that are kind of jumping all kinds of thoughts before us and desires. And in order to awaken that light upon us, and this light can illuminate in us only if we are focused towards it. I'm lacking this. This is what I'm missing. This is what I want. Only in such a way it will influence. And therefore, I did a kind of a nice diagram while we were talking between me and Amit, how we should explain this to you. So you know, there used to be a computer when I was younger, the Commodore 64. I don't know if you heard about it. That's the computer when it's operated when I want anything in the study other than for it to work on my point in the heart or grow my desire for spirituality. Because the truth is, that's the influence of the action of the surrounding light. When I study, like Kabbalah says, and read from that intention, when I want to be in that reality, that this is what I'm lacking, I want for this to be what I lack, and I don't even want anything, but I'm asking myself, why, for the heck, excuse me for using my such language, but why do I want something like that? And even though it's not hurting me, I want it to hurt me, and it starts already to operate something else. Meaning, imagine that we have two processors. One processor is the little will to receive. It's the Commodore 64. If I want wealth, honor, knowledge, what people usually want in the study of wisdom Kabbalah. The light does not enter. The surrounding light does not operate upon me. I remained Commodore 64. There is in us a process, we'll call it A9. I don't know what's been done yet, with endless layers, and there's such desires. And the moment I focus upon it, upon that goal of the study, then from the equivalence of form, that I'm lacking only the desire, the surrounding lights start operating me, because this is the desire of my point in the heart, and I start growing this. And then you can see this, and this you can see and already measure from now. You will see, according to your reading of the wisdom of the writings of Kabbalah that are on our site, which we will start publishing for you, also publicizing also on the Facebook. See how it influences you. What happens to my desire in relation with the study of the wisdom of Kabbalah? Is it drawn more or less? And then we'll start talking about how I influence myself so that I will always have more and more desire for it. And then we will see that when those writings of Kabbalah will start sitting in my feelings. Then, therefore, we need to understand that the purpose of the study of the wisdom of Kabbalah is not for knowledge and not for understanding. It is very different to the study methods that we got used to. It's truly... We talked about the definition of the wisdom of Kabbalah, the order of roots that are all coming to one very exalted goal. What is the purpose of all these roots, of all these laws, of all that is written to us by the Kabbalists? The revelation of the Creator. If throughout the study I don't try with force to hold on to this thing that will bring me for this search and will give me suffering in life, if these things won't be there, then all these laws and roots and all these things, they're not worth so much. They kind of become some kind of dry study, intellectual study. There's nothing here. And if I hold on to this and prepare myself, and we will talk about how we prepare ourselves, then I start all of a sudden to get in the study a sensation, a feeling, and a certain trembling and a desire, and all of a sudden spirituality begins to become important to me, and that's all we need, because we only need the vessel. We once gave an example, Rabash gave this example. You talk about a big sea, a sea of light, and you have what? A little thimble, like the grandmother's thimbles that they use. Yeah, a little thimble. And you took this thimble and you immersed it in the sea, and that's it. It filled up. What are you going to do with the rest of the sea? There's nothing to do. I have no deficiency for it. Therefore, you need a vessel that is endless to the degree of the great endless light.
And that infinite vessel, as we have learned in previous vessels when we spoke about the quality of life, happens when I connect to myself additional kelim. My kli is limited, it's small, so I need more kelim and more kelim and more vessels. So from here comes the matter of connection.
Before the connection, Pascal from France is asking us, when we feel the light, is it necessarily a positive feeling, or can it also be, can it come out in a feeling that's maybe not so good? Pascal, we will talk about this, but I'll answer in a schematic, short manner about this. From the shattering, like we said, we're made up of two systems, the system of reception and the system of giving. Kabbalists call these two systems good and bad in our sensation, and truth and false. Good and bad. Good, I'm full. Doesn't matter. I'm filled with knowledge, with security, with all kinds of things. Bad, I don't have, I'm lacking, or Amit has more than me. We know this. The truth, anything without taking into consideration the good and bad on the degree of my desire, the level of my desire, but rather what brings me closer to the quality of a soul. That's truth, and as I'm concerned, that's the important thing. Even though in my desire, in this body of mine, in the big desire, feel bad, oh, I didn't get filled up, but it's the truth. And false or lie, it could be that I'm full and I'm filled and all that, but in the values of, am I coming closer to the quality of bestowal? Am I lacking in that? I see that it's a lie. And a person who reaches spiritual attainment, it's where these two axes of good and bad, or truth and false, they join together and become one of truth, where truth is one thing.
Another question by Eleonora. Where is she from? She's from Brazil. I feel like I have a cover over my eyes, but through the study of the Kabbalah, will I see the light? Is it called faith? Nice. Nice. We said that the wisdom of Kabbalah redefines concepts. It redefines our whole perception of our world. And it's like names that we thought that point out to a certain phenomenon. All of a sudden, Kabbalists say, no, this is something entirely different. We thought that home is a home. But if we read about a home in a Kabbalist book, then we know that home is a desire. So also faith. There are different types of faith, and this is an advanced question, and that concept is an advanced concept. We will discuss it deeply in the next semester. There is faith below reason, there is faith above reason, but faith is a force. Faith is a kind of spiritual revelation. Faith is a state that the light expands, called the light of Chasadim, which gives me the ability to be in order to bestow without wanting anything for myself. This is the true spiritual faith, and this is faith built through a lot of effort and exertion in the spiritual path and the study, like we just started.
I want to reveal something to you. I'm certain that you're permitting me. How we are about to advance in our study beyond the studies that will seemingly add more knowledge. We'll open our mouth like that, and knowledge will be poured into us like that. There's such a thing which is called intention, the intention of the study. That's what Bala Sulam calls the desire and the great longing. Just like you maybe once had, God forbid, a terrible problem to a member of your family. I'm in some assembly and says that I may be here, but my physically, but my mind is over there. Like I'm about to win the lottery tomorrow or something like that, and I'm constantly in that. There's the same thing. There's a thing that is called about the quantity and the quality of the intention. The quantity, how much, how many times I repeat and come back to that thought of the scrutiny of the purpose of the study. Why am I doing this? What are we sitting here for? We're going to be wiser? What? Or do we really want together to attain the spiritual purpose? Because that's the only thing the light operates upon. And the quality is how much I scrutinize my attitude. As I all of a sudden disconnected from this, and how much it hurts me, how much I would like to get closer to come back to this. Even if I see that I don't care, then why don't I care? Meaning all these scrutinizations, even now with us, are qualitative scrutinies that we are going to start scrutinizing together at this point of our hearts. What am I longing for? What do I want? The quality is not just quality. We need to understand that this desire to discover, to scrutinize my intention, what for? That's the absolute opposite of our ego. My ego, I don't want, let me be, what for? What should I think? Sit and study, look what beautiful diagrams. Look how beautiful Amit is. Look at Tal, how beautiful she is. They're talking, nice. Fill up with it. What do you need? Tomorrow you're going to tell your friends. Just don't think. It's truly opposite that. And we need to find all those possible tricks so that we will be able to have it as important, or somehow in our box, we will be able to remain in those thoughts. Who will influence me? How can I even be in this box where my box is right now? I'm sorry for telling you, it's too busy with the World Cup and how to do like a good barbecue. I'm moving my apartment. I want to have a big barbecue, 6 feet long for guests and other things, and my bank account, and what can you do? And how do I make it so that specifically the study and specifically the drawing of the light and this whole thing, which is the only thing that influences, that is what is important. So that will be in our mind.
I have an answer for you.
Well, please.
I won't let you know. I will make you wait till next week, and I will not allow you to tell this answer also. I know you know it, because this is really the question we should come up from here with. It's an excellent question for scrutiny. You will see that if we will engage with that question throughout the week, how can I prepare myself correctly for the lesson? 1. 2. How can I, during the lesson, to be in the right thought constantly? Where will I get all those directions from, all those precisions, the energy, the desire, the longing, the great desire and longing, as Bala Sulam writes? Let us engage in that. Let us scrutinize it. Let's try to answer it together.
So only one word before we move to Tal with a marathon of questions. So, friends, just one thing. Do exercises throughout this week. That's our first task. Read as much as possible on our site and try to do what Amit said. Let's try to scrutinize how much it influences me, how much I'm reading it through the intention, what I'm scrutinizing from this. That's the first thing. And the second thing?
And if you want the original text, let us focus on the essence of the wisdom of Kabbalah,
which is what we published on the internet. Yes. And after that, after Tal, we're going to tell you about our Facebook group. We have to talk about that too. Tal, please.
We spoke about the intention during the lesson, and Erica from Sweden is asking, should we focus on the matter of the spiritual desire only when we study, only when reading from the scripts, or also when we are elsewhere doing other things?
It's a question that moves me because that's a discernment that students usually reach after a period of 2 years, or I don't know, a very long period. That's amazing. Friends here are truly ready. It's like after a long period when one understands that, wait a minute, it's not just a study. It's not only when someone opens a certain window and a frame like that, and I'm kind of like in a sensation that everything is established, and here's the time, and here it's all ends, and then I go to my life. All of a sudden I start to feel that, wait a minute, but our whole lives are like that. I can see all of our lives through some prism of sorts, like I do in the study. What is life for? Who are these people? What is operating me? You start to understand that we're actually coming closer to, in this form, to revelation, just like Adam revealed this, how Abraham and so on have revealed this. In order to reach that, I come back to that same question that I'm asking you, what Amit doesn't allow me to disclose. How, not only in the study, well, in the study, yeah, okay, it's special, Moshe and Amit are reminding me, but how in life? A very good question. Okay, an open question. Maybe you should discuss this amongst you on Facebook there.
Another question. Mehdi is asking about the grill in a bank account, as you mentioned before. Does it mean that the more my vessel grows and becomes higher in terms of its inspiration towards spirituality, aspiration, so should I give the importance of all the desires, needs, and longings which I have in corporality for respect and wealth and even emotional pleasures? That too is a classical question, and Bala Sulam himself writes about it in the article in Shamati, and that too is an advanced question. There is a fear that starts eating up in a person, that perhaps that wisdom is going to bring me to an upper world which is concealed from this world, and they tell me it's opposite from this world. I don't know what there is, what it contains. I don't know what will happen to me. I love my barbecue, I love my wife, I love my Jaguar or my Mini Minor or my Fiat Uno, pardon me, and so on and so forth. So what's going to happen to all those desires of mine? Not only they will remain, to the contrary. We spoke about it a few times before. The wisdom of Kabbalah only opens up the desires more and more and more and more. So there's difference between corporal desires, which I'm immersed with now, and the new desires, which I will discover as spiritual, which are much bigger, much more meaningful. And perhaps if they will be bigger, then naturally they will turn off my corporal desires, like a bigger fish swallows up a smaller fish. But it doesn't mean that I'm losing those pleasures and those feelings. To the contrary, the meaning of the wisdom of Kabbalah, its essence is to know how to receive pleasure in an absolute way. Meaning also the work that we do in this work, we have to connect it to the upper world. We don't connect it from below upward just like that. Rather, we try to come to a connection between us above this world, and then we also know how to receive pleasures in a balanced way in this world.
And one more sentence. What was her name?
Mehdi.
Mehdi, listen. Between us, no one hears this. Don't give up anything. Do everything, whatever you're used to. Pleasure and girls and emotional and good romantic novel and horror movies and whatever you want. I don't know, dive, sing, karaoke, whatever you want. Only add now a little bit of the wisdom of Kabbalah to your life. If you have some time that you don't know what to do with that time, read something. The essence of the wisdom of Kabbalah, go into the site a little bit, go into our general Facebook page, just add that. Later, we will see that desires which arise in us, doesn't matter what, we will see them through a spiritual prism. And we'll talk about that, I think, on lesson number 8, about the lesson called There's No One Else Besides Him. And last question?
Hard to choose. So, how can I know that what I'm feeling as truth is really the truth? You can't know. You only have that sensation. You can say, but all spirituality. I remember that a student once asked, well, if everything is spiritual, so we're actually, he says, come here, I'll kind of give you a little smack and you'll feel what's real or not. Meaning spirituality is what I see. The sages of the wisdom of Kabbalah say that one should not judge other than what his eyes see. There is an immense study here. It's the study of degrees, which are called, like Amit reminded us, it's within reason, above reason, below reason, fanaticism, and above reason, the degree to which I want to reach, which the Kabbalists tell us about. There is amazing work that needs to be talked about here. But for the time being, what I see is the truth. But it's the truth in my degree. I can aspire to reach a truth in a higher degree. How? What Baal HaSulam said in item 155, and we're recommending that to you also here. Our time is up. We wanted to do a special invitation. We started
last week already.
We started last week. A general Facebook group to all the groups in all the nations, in all languages.
Have you visited there?
Yeah, I visited there. There was an Italian guy there. He put a plugin that translates automatically, and I started reading the comments, and it was very exciting to see the communication, the new communication that was created between us, between all of us. And we really would like to recommend and ask you and direct you to be there. I think that now, the more you will get into that group, without leaving your your local groups with your own language, but there is something about that group that I think that will turn our study into something more practical, to give it a more tangible layer.
So no fear, enter. It's no problem at all. I also want to say that even those that don't even know what this Facebook is, or where his screen is, his computer screen is a plant holder, it doesn't matter. The moderators will send you an explanation. How do I enter? How do I join that group? It's truly not a problem. And also we invite all the friends that are still a little with a little anxiety. Oh, I don't know. I'm afraid I don't know the language. Go in there. There's this simultaneous translation application there, and you'll be able to go in there and truly create an environment.
And I remind you that we already shared some clips that we had prepared for your questions and answers. I don't know if you saw them, but they're shared on the Facebook, and they were translated by your moderators.
Yes, they're being translated as we speak.
Some of them are translated, and we'll keep on doing it also during this week. So questions that we couldn't answer today, we had a busy lesson today. So keep on sending us your question. We will answer them, and we will share those clips with you so that you will be able to go over them and to get answers for your questions.
So we're going to remember our task for this week. Well, we said, how do we prepare ourselves for the study? How during the study do we maintain the desirable intention? Discuss it throughout the week. Try to read the writings, and we will meet you next week. Thank you very much for being with us. So long.